This video looks at National 5 reverse percentages. So the learning intentions are how to calculate the original value of something after a percentage increase or decrease has occurred. So we will be successful if we can calculate that original value of something using the process you have been shown. Okay, so first of all, we need to know what is this process? What does reverse percentages actually mean? So the process is about working backwards, as the name would suggest, or in reverse, to find an original amount of something based on a percentage. So rather than looking for the value at the end after a percentage increase or decrease, we want to know what was the value to start with. So we are given the end value and given the percentage, and we want to know what was the value to start with. Okay, so here is a problem to consider, and you can have a little think about how you would go about solving this. Okay, so a large bag of crisps costing £1.70 contains 30% more than the normal bag of crisps. So we want to calculate the price of a normal bag. So we know the price of the big bag, and we know that that price is £1.70, and that is 30% more than the normal bag. So let's create a little diagram for this. So let's say that on the left-hand side here, you've got your normal bag of crisps. And on the right, you can see, well, there's the size there of the normal bag, but then we've got another 30% on top of that. And we know that we are looking for, well, what was the price of that normal bag before we started? We know that we've increased that bag by 30%, and we've got to £1.70. So what was that number to start with? So here you can see a little arrow, and it's pointing backwards to the missing amount of money. So we're working backwards to find that missing amount of money, hence reverse percentages. Okay, now there's a very clever little layout that we can use to help us to solve this, and it deals with something called proportion. You might have met that before in S1, S2, or if you've done National 5 before. So we're going to work in proportion. So we're going to set up the calculation with what we know. So we know so far that we are dealing with this bigger bag of crisps. So we've got 100% here. So you can see there's our 100%, and we're adding on another 30%. So we had our 100% and we're adding on the 30, so we've got extra amount. So 100% plus the 30% we know is at £1.70. So we're modelling this little problem now, just writing it down. So let's just simplify or shorten down that left-hand side of working. So that comes to 130%. So we know that 130% comes to £1.70. But what we want to know is, what is the value of this 100% bag? So we know that 130% is £1.70. We know that whole bag is £1.70, but we don't know that little bag. So you might remember how to work this out. And obviously we're not in school, so I can't question you in the way that I normally would, but could we therefore find out what 1%, one little slither of this bag was, and then if we knew what 1% was, we could then really work out any percentage we wanted, and we want to know 100. So if we could work out what 1% was, that would help us to get 100. So to get 1%, well, if we know that 130 equals 170, then to get 1%, all we're doing is we're doing £1.70 divided by 130. So to get from here to here, we're actually dividing both sides by that percentage. So we're going to do it the same on both sides. We're going to keep both sides in proportion. So we're going to divide that side by 130, and we're going to come over the other side, and we're also going to divide the other side by 130 as well. So we're going to do the same over here. So on the calculator, if I do £1.70 divided by 130, then I get this answer here. Now I've left in all the decimals because I'm not finished the calculation. So that's 1%. So I'm dividing both sides by 130 to get what 1% is. Once I've got 1% then, well, I can times that by 100. And that will give me what 100% is, which is what I'm actually looking for. So now I know 100% is £1. And then I've got a big decimal, so now I need to round it. So if I rounded it, because it's money, to 2 decimal places, it would be £1.31. So 100% value is £1.31. So that means that this little bag here, 100% is worth £1.31. Okay, now we're going to do a fair few examples on the video. So again, you can get a notes jotter ready and we'll work through these examples, and you can pause the video wherever you want and you can work through this. So again, we're looking at calculator work today. So make sure you've got your calculator. So a gym's membership has increased by 17% over the past year. It now has 585 members. How many members did it have a year ago? So we want to work back and get what it had a year ago. So we had our members 1 year ago. We had 100% of our members 1 year ago, but that increased by 17%, and now the amount of members that we've got is 585. We want to know what it was before we added on the 17%. We want to get back to this 100%. So we tidy up the left-hand side first of all, so that gives us 117%. And now we're going to follow that little proportion process to help us to get 100%. So we're actually going to divide, remember, both sides by that percentage. We're going to divide by 117 on that side, and we're going to divide by 117 on this side as well. That is giving us, remember, what 1% is worth. So if I do 585 divided by 117, I actually get 5. So 1% is 5 members. But I want to know, remember, what is that 100% value back last year? So now I'm going to say, right, well, if I know that 1% is 5, well, if I times that by 100, then I'm going to get what 100% is worth. So 5 times 100 is 500. So we've now got the answer. So 100% is 500. So 1 year ago, we had 500 members. And that makes sense. We had 500 members. We're adding on 17%, and now we've got 585 members. So always check your answer makes sense. Right, here's the next example. Okay, so my house has increased in value by 15% in the last 2 years. It is now worth 230,000. How much was it worth 2 years ago? Okay, so we had the house 2 years ago, and it was 100%. Then the house increased in value, so it went up by 15%, and it's now worth 230,000. We want to know, well, what was it worth before that percentage increase? What was this 100% value? So we tidy up the left, so 115% equals 230,000. That first line of work in there, the second line of work in there, gives you 1 mark in the exam. Okay, so that's 115%. Remember now, we want to work out, well, what is 1%? So to get from 115 to 1, I'm going to divide by 115. I need to keep the sides in proportion with each other. So I'm going to divide the other side by 115 as well. Okay, so that gives me £2,000. So 1% value is 2,000. I want to know, well, what was 100%? What was it worth 2 years ago? So I'm going to times by 100. 1% is 2,000. 100% is £200,000. The house is worth £200,000 2 years ago. Okay, next example. Example 3. So I bought a new car in September last year. By this September, the car had depreciated. by 20% and now worth 9,600. How much did I pay for the car last September? Okay, so last September we had our car, it was 100% of the value. But by this September, it had depreciated. So it actually reduced by 20%. So this time we're actually taking away the percentage. And now it's only worth 9,600. So this time I want to know, well, what was it worth at the start before it depreciated? So I've got my car now is worth 80% of its original value at 9,600. What was its value last year? So 1%, remember, we're going to divide both sides by 80. Divide by 80 on both sides. We keep it in proportion. So if I divide that side by 80, I'm going to get £120. So 1% of the car is £120 times by 100 to get 100%. So that car last year was actually worth £12,000. It makes sense. It's went down to 9,600. It used to be 12,000. Make sure your answer makes sense. Okay, number 4. Again, Jane bought a painting at an auction. Unfortunately, the painting depreciated in value, so it went down again by 7% and it's now worth 4,185. How much was it when it was bought? Well, when it was bought, it was 100% of the value. We don't know what that was. Then it went down in value by 7% and it's now only worth £4,185. So its value now is actually only 93%. So if we could work out what 1% was, we could actually then work out what 100% is. So remember, we can divide both sides by 93, and that gives us what 1% is. So dividing both sides by 93 gives me £45. But 100% of the value then would be then timesing by 100 to get what the painting was worth originally when it was bought. So if I times that by 100, then it was bought for £4,500, and that makes sense. It's more than what it was now after the loss to 7%. Okay, now a slightly different example now, so be very careful when you read this question and when you see questions like this. So this time, a student pays an aeroplane fare of £240. This represents 60% of the adult fare. Find the adult fare. So this time there's only 2 pieces of information. It's telling us that 60% is actually worth £240. So the adult fare is 100%, right? And the child's fare is worth 60%. So we want to find out, well, what is the adult fare? The adult fare is the 100% value. That is the value before there's the reduction for the child ticket. So we do it the same way. So it starts off slightly different because we don't have that first line of working. There's no reduction or increase. It's just telling us that 60% is 240. So let's get 1%. So remember, divide both sides by the percentage number. So we're dividing 240 by 60. That gives me 4. So that must mean then that 100% is worth 4 times 100, £400. So that means that the adult ticket is £400. Okay, and then the last example, just one more, just to double check we know what we're doing. So this is a little process. So Laura's wages have increased. So they were 100%. They've increased. So remember and check for increase or decrease. They've increased by 6%. And she now earns £19,080. So that must mean that her wages are worth 106%. So let's find out what 1% is. So remember, we divide both sides by 106. And by doing that, we're finding out what 1% is worth. So 1% is worth £180. So to get back to what she was paid before her increase, we're going to times by 100. So before she had her increase, she was actually only paid £18,000. Okay. So you can go through these questions again. I would recommend that you use this process every single time. You can't go wrong. Normally 3 marks in the exam. You can see the 3 lines of working. So mark for the first line there, second line, and then your last line. So valuable points in an exam. Okay, now you can go and try the quiz.